All right. Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Are you enjoying the weather?
I'm liking this weather way better than I was a couple of weeks ago. Yes. I don't
That's
like
fun.
that nasty, hot, humid stuff. That's not my cup of tea.
Yeah. You realize it's about to be fall, though, right?
I like fall.
You like fall?
So I am definitely team fall 100%.
Mhm.
I could skip summer every year.
Gotcha. Really? So are you more of a spring person too?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So a little bit of the warmer, cooler weather
Yeah. I
versus
don't
the
like, listen, this is how I run my whole life. Nothing is ever just like cold or hot. It's always that gray middle. So that's why I like the fall and the spring. I always like the messy middle is what I call it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I don't mind the heat at all. If I have a pool, I don't mind the heat.
Okay. All right. So I don't like water. Like I don't get into pools. I don't like the beach.
Oh man.
I don't like to get into it. I don't mind going.
Okay.
So yeah.
So maybe laying out. Are you a layout person or no? Like you still need like the umbrella.
No, so I'll lay out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll lay out. I don't ever put on sunblock. I'll get burned, do all of that. It's the humidity I really don't like. No.
I agree with that. The humidity just kind of, so whenever I like go get off the plane in Puerto Rico, my hair is like, poof, and I'm like, I really got to stop like straightening it. It doesn't work each and every time. I never learn my lesson.
That's all right. It's all right. It's all good.
All right. So welcome everybody. We are here
Hello.
live today with Michelle Curtis, self-love coach. If anybody has watched any of my lives previously, you know that she has been on a live before. She is part of the Unapologetically movement when it comes to the retreats in part 1. So she has been with us in January, I think it'll be a year.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Exciting. And today, we wanted to hop on a live and talk about the reality of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's definitely been a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
In the past few years, I think more so too. I feel like through COVID and all that, now you're hearing about self-care, self-love, and all these things.
Right.
Which is a great thing.
Absolutely.
But it's, you don't want it to be something that's just a trend or a fad.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's most certainly not a trend or a fad. It's something, especially for women, we have to prioritize. Doesn't mean that the men shouldn't prioritize it. Right. So men, love yourself more, and then you can love the women more too. Right.
Yeah.
Because that's what we want. We want the love. We want the good
Mm-hmm.
love. We want the healthy love.
Right.
So I think it is important for every person to experience self-love in a way that they've never experienced it before, or if you have, continuing that process. It's an everyday occurrence. It's not just well, this week I'll focus on it and next week I won't.
Right.
But that's what we'll get into today. For those, if this is your first time watching, I'm Marianne Francis, LMFT. I'm the founder of Mending Hearts, LLC, as well as my program called Unapologetically, which is a self-love movement, and it's a movement for women. And, we do a lot of things under the umbrella. Day workshops for women, love overnight retreats, as well as this summer, I initiated the first girls group
Cool.
and workshops, as well as getting into the schools and doing workshops into the schools, as well as building a program curriculum for the schools as well. So there's a lot of things going on. And Unapologetically, as well as Mending Hearts too, because Mending Hearts is my baby. That's the therapy practice, and that's my passion as well. But it's a different way to, provide a service and get more out of it. And today, we have Michelle Curtis, who is a self-love coach, who will be, our topic today is the reality of self-love. So we're going to have a conversation about that. So welcome and thank you everybody for joining. Michelle? Hey.
Take it away. So hello, I am Michelle Curtis. I am a self-love coach, as Marianne said. And my big thing is that I coach folks and empower folks on how to break through that fear and that resistance of really loving themselves, like fully, without apology and without all the additional like chaos and mind drama. So like, I'm like your own little personal cheerleader. And so when I'll just jump right in. Self-love, as Marianne said, is something that is like it seems super, super trendy. And so it was extremely difficult as I was like shifting into coaching. I was like, oh my gosh, am I just a part of this trend and it's going to like fizzle out? Like, how am I going to get people to understand the like power and the necessity behind true self-love and what that really means? And I think for me, for those of you that don't know me, I'll tell you a little bit about my like story or part of my story and why self-love is such an important fact or like piece to my life and why that's what I coach on now. I've always been sort of like the happy, outgoing, like super silly person. I've always been like that. I've always been able to show up fun and full of life so if you didn't know me and you saw me from the outside, you would definitely think, oh, this is somebody that's like super, super confident. Like she knows she's the shit. Like
bubbly.
Yeah. Yes. Very bubbly. All the things. And those things are all true. And they were all true years ago as well. What I realized was that I was also really, 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 really good at acting. I was really, really good at showing up the way I was supposed to show up, or showing up the way this group of friends showed up, or showing up the way like my parents needed me to show up, and showing up the way the teachers needed me to show up. And so it wasn't until like certain things, like I was always, I would audition for something and I would get it. I would apply for something, I would get in. And then like all of a sudden that one thing I didn't get into, like I applied for college. I wanted to go to NYU. That was a goal. I was going to be a criminal psychologist, minor in drama. Like it was the whole thing. I had it all planned out. I applied early to NYU. I didn't get in. And then my whole world seemed to shatter. Now, remind you, I said it seemed to shatter. It did not actually shatter. It felt like it was shattering, which is fine. And I was like, well, what the heck am I supposed to do now? So it's me. So I tend to make big, drastic moves. So I was like, I'll join the army. So that's what I did. You don't get into your dream school, you join the army. That is not what I'm saying. That's
why not?
Like, hey, I grew up in a military family, so it sort of seemed like it made sense. It did not. I served my time. It was amazing. I would never take any of that back. But it was throughout those years, being in the military, meeting my oldest daughter's father, going through an abusive relationship, that I started to realize that I was putting all of my self-worth in these things, these events, these actions that I was taking, my reactions to them. And I started to like just lose my way and not really know, like somebody would ask, like, Michelle, what makes you happy? And I'd be like, oh, like my kids, or, my husband, or, I like to write or whatever. And it was like, all right, but like, what passions do you have? And I couldn't answer those questions. So that's where this whole like process started for me. I was just like, what the hell? Like, who am I? And I think that that's what's super important is self-love is so much more than just saying that you love yourself. It's about truly knowing who you are and being aware of all of the pieces of you. And in all of the trends, and don't get me wrong, I love all the trends. I'm here for all of them. And if you are on TikTok, I'm here for all the body positivity. I'm here for all of the things. However, we hear go do these self-care acts, go get your pedicures, go love your body in whatever shape it's in, and, and show up 100% who you are all the time. And it's like, yes, that's great. And I say all of those things probably to every single one of my clients, but where's the depth, right? How do I do those things? What does that really look like? So I can be a self-love coach and also acknowledge that I'm 30 pounds over the weight that I want to be. And so for a while, when I first started coaching, I was like, well, I can't ever talk about the fact that like I'm 30 pounds over the weight I want to be, because then it sounds like I'm putting myself down. And then how is that going against what self-love really is? Is that going against all the things I'm teaching? And then I realized, no, because what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to get in front of a camera. I'm not going to stand in front of a mirror, and I'm not going to talk shit to myself. I'm not going to say, I can't believe you're 30 pounds more than you want to be. I cannot believe you allowed yourself to put on all this weight. I cannot believe, or you can't do this until you've lost this weight, or I'm not going to do that, because that's where those trends kick in, right? When we truly have acknowledged who we are wholly and fully, and can say with no hesitation that we love who we are, I can stand in front of a mirror and say, yes, I know that I am not the weight that I want to be. I also know that even 30 pounds heavier, I am beautiful. That even 30 pounds heavier, I am intelligent. That even 30 pounds beautiful, I know where my boundaries lie. I know that my worth goes beyond that. And I can say those things because I respect who I am. So I can show up at the gym if I want, and not beat myself up if all I can do is the treadmill for 15 minutes, because that's all I can do. That doesn't mean that you don't get upset about these things. That doesn't mean that I don't wish I could do more. What that means is I understand that loving myself and honoring who I am and being respectful to me is a process. It is a journey. It is not a snap of the fingers, a change overnight. That's not the process. And that's where that trend shifts into what's the reality behind self-love, right? That reality is that you can embody self-love and not always be happy with yourself. That's okay. You can embody self-love and want things to change.
Right.
And that's where I think the confusion lies. Because if people are like, how do I do both of those things? How do both of those things exist simultaneously? Well, first of all, we are amazing human beings.
Right.
So that's how they exist simultaneously. Because we aren't, like I said in the beginning, it's never just black and white when it comes to self-love. It's always that messy middle, that mixture of, yes, I can acknowledge these flaws and I can love those flaws anyway. Say you have children, right? And your kid's being a jerk. Kids are jerks. It happens, right? Like, we know it, especially if they're anything like their parents. We are all jerks at times. So you don't sit there, and you might not like be a 100, like this, your kid's biggest fan in that moment, but like you're your kid's ride or die in most situations, right? And you love your kid unconditionally. Why can we not do the same for ourselves? Why do we have to hold ourselves at a different standard than we hold our partners, our friends, our coworkers, our children? No, because first and foremost, they'll listen, like my kids aren't going to thrive if I'm not thriving.
Right.
My relationships aren't going to soar if I'm not in a place where I can help them soar.
Right.
So we need to be able to learn how to give ourselves that unconditional love, that respect, even when things are crappy, even in the negative. And then you're like, okay, Michelle, but how? Well, you have to decide and figure out, what does unconditional love look like to you?
Right. Can I add something really quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I'm hearing you say, right, is learn how to acknowledge the imperfect parts of you.
Yes.
And sometimes those parts need nurturance. But
Mhm.
here's the thing that I've also learned is if you don't learn how to acknowledge those imperfect parts of you,
Mhm.
what you do is also reject part of yourself. So
Yes.
how can you love yourself if you're rejecting yourself too?
Mhm.
It's creating a block.
Right.
So tell
Right.
us more.
So that's why I journal. It was a perfect segue right into, yes.
All
So
right.
that is one of, and I get it. Journaling is not for everyone. And I would never sit here and say journal if it doesn't feel good or whatever, because I'm not all about that. Like, I am a journaler. Like, I'm a writer first and foremost. So I journal through those rejections because those rejections are always going to come up.
Right.
Right. So one of those journaling prompts for me is always like, well, first of all, when I ask the question, what does unconditional love look like for me? My definition is going to be completely different than somebody else's. And that's the stuff you want to journal on. But when those rejections come up, and I bring up weight a lot because body image has always been a big thing for me. There was a lot of, that was one of the parts of myself that I rejected the most. And I'm going to start using the word rejected because I like the way I liked how you use that term. That was the self-love part of me that I struggled with the most because I used to be a very thin person. And I got a lot of outward, and let me be clear, I got a lot of outward attention because of the way my body was shaped. And I'm not going to lie, I love attention and I loved that attention. Right. So when I started putting on the weight and I stopped getting that attention, or it stopped being as noticeable to me, because I'm sure people are still looking, it's fine. Of course. But when I stopped getting some of that attention, then I began to think that there was no worth. People aren't paying attention to me because I'm no longer this beautiful figured woman. Right. Now I'll never be able to do, and you can insert that, like, fill in the blank with anything, because I used my weight as why I couldn't do anything. I couldn't travel because I don't look cute in a dress anymore. My stomach is too big. So like, I can't go apply for some job. Like, I used my weight for everything. And because it was becoming such an issue, and I can talk to all the friends in the world and all my friends can tell me how beautiful I am and how, oh my gosh, Michelle, you look great. And I'm sure when they say it, they mean it. Because I know if my friends were talking to me, I would say it, I mean it 100%. I needed to feel those things myself. So I journaled about it. And I journaled like, why does this extra weight bother you so much? What is it about this? What can you no longer do because of this extra weight? Right. And I'm writing this list. And the list was things like travel, go run outside with my kids, all of these things. And then I'm looking at this list and I'm like, okay, well, Michelle, you aren't trying to do any of those things. So is it like, yes, if I go out and run with the kids, I'm probably going to get exhausted. But is that me not being able to run with the kids, or is that me not wanting to be exhausted and letting people see that I can't breathe because I'm running? Right. Like there wasn't like a true physical reason. So, but I had to journal through this, and I'm journaling, and sometimes I would be answering the same question over and over and over again, every single day, coming up with the same answers. And then one day I was like, all right, so let's really look at your list. Let's really see what it is that you can't do, what it is that you're rejecting or you're saying is holding you back from all of these things. And then I started to realize that I wasn't doing these things, and I was just using this excuse, this procrastination, this whatever this was. Yes.
We need something to blame.
Yes. And I was like, okay, so why don't I just start to try to do those things? So I picked small things, like I'm going to run outside with the kids, and I'm going to get sweaty, and I'm going to get gross. I'm going to have to take my breaks and be like, okay, y'all going to have to run. I need a minute.
Right.
But when I was doing that, then I felt good because I was showing up for my kids. I was showing up for myself. I wasn't paying attention to the other moms at the park, the other dads at the park, the sisters at the park that were running around and were probably in better shape than me. Hell, they might not have been in better shape than me. I don't even know. They were probably dying too. And that's okay.
Right.
And it was as I came up with these realizations that respect started to work its way back in. And it's that underlying self-respect that helps us move forward with that unconditional self-love, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I had something and I lost it.
No,
Because
so let me add to that too. So if you don't have to, in order to gain that respect for yourself, right? How can you gain that self-respect if you're also not trying, right?
Right.
A lot of times we like to blame other things or people for the reason why we're not where we are. Number one, in life in general, but also within ourselves. Well,
Yes.
this is the person, this is the reason why I'm not here today, or I'm not in this position, or I'm not, whatever it might be. But what do you gain, going back to what you said, what do you gain respect-wise within yourself if you're constantly waiting for people to do all the things for you?
Right.
If I do it myself, I feel more empowered.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm going to feel a lot more independent, and I'm probably not going to need you, right? I don't know what this thing about needing people is,
Yeah.
but it's so hardcore. But maybe next topic, somewhere down the line. But
right.
it is part of our self-respect.
Yes.
Why don't we want that for ourselves?
So I can answer that for me. I think a big thing for me was it was not always not wanting the self-respect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it wasn't always about not wanting the self-respect. Part of it had to do with if there was always that little bit of something to blame, then it was always okay if something didn't go my way. It was always okay if something didn't go right, because there was always that little thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there's also that whole people make you feel like shit when you feel good about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that we are responsible, or like I feel like I'm responsible for my emotions, I'm responsible for my feelings, I'm responsible for how I allow someone to treat me, but I'm also human, and I also know that other people's words are painful.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So for me, it was always a little crutch that I needed just in case something didn't work out.
Mm.
So I needed that little bit of something that I wasn't doing right. So I needed to not always lose the weight. Again, I go back to weight, and I'm only using weight in this instance because it's the easiest thing for me to talk about for my experiences. I always wanted, there was a point in time where I know all of the things I need to do to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be real. I know all of the things. I was in the army. Like I know all of the things.
You got all the techniques.
Like I have all of that. I trained people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know all the things, right?
So you got the key for me to lose my gut, but not my butt.
Yes, I know all the things. However, if I didn't lose all the weight, now this is before, right now, I'm okay right now. But before, if I didn't lose all the weight and like I didn't, that dress didn't look that, so like say I couldn't, there was a party I was invited to. I really wanted to go to the party, but I kind of didn't want to go to the party. And this seems so trivial and so small, but this is like, you can take this to like big scale too. Mm-hmm. But that dress didn't fit. The dress didn't fit because I didn't lose the weight, but it's not my fault. I mean, it's my fault that the dress didn't fit, that didn't lose weight, but then it didn't have to go to the party. So then I didn't have to be uncomfortable with like something else, like maybe like the social anxiety I really had. Mm. But we weren't ready to address that social anxiety. I'm okay to address the fact that the dress doesn't fit because I weigh more. Right. But I'm not willing to say the real reason I don't want to go to the party is because I'm nervous, because I have a little bit of social anxiety, and I'm just now starting to dabble with that and understand exactly what that looks like for me. And instead of telling you that, I'm just going to tell you like I can't make it, and then I'm going to be pissed off, and you're going to be like, "Why? I don't fit into the dress. I'm not going to go," whatever. Mm. And there's my thing.
The underlying factor.
Yes, always. So I think a lot of times we don't want that self-respect. That's what we aren't even, I don't even think we always know why we don't want it, I guess is the real answer. I think there's always something under that. And that's a lot of the work that I do, is really like, well, why? And then you answer that why. And then I want to know, okay, well, why that? Mm-hmm. Why that? Because eventually you're going to get to where there are no more whys, and there's like this thing. The realness. And what is that thing? And that's the real issue.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. And I think entails, what you were saying before too, and part of that blame as well, and needing a reason sometimes to blame other people, is that we don't want to disappoint ourselves.
Of course not.
What if I'm a disappointment to myself?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, and then I have to deal with that issue and trying to unpack about, you know, the disappointment that I've maybe put on myself. And now, you know, again, it's easier to blame other things or
Absolutely.
other people than me coming to me. But again, that ties into that underlying factor of it all as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of my like journal prompts is always like, I'm always dreaming of something else. Like there's always something else I want to do. And then, you know, there's that thing that you're not doing. So I'm always like, well, what is keeping, in my case, what is keeping me from my dream? Right. And I'll journal about all the things. Well, my work hours are crazy and this is too much and I can't do this. And, I can't seem to figure out the timing and all of these things. The underlying factor is it's me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's really when and this is how it is with everything, with self-love, with self-care. Like we are afraid. So many of us are afraid of greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the fear of success is something that people don't talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can truly show up 100% for yourself, which is what self-love is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Success is there.
Mm-hmm.
And many of us have been conditioned to not succeed or to think that we're not supposed to succeed, that we are so afraid of what are we going to do? What's going to happen when we get to that next point? What do we do with that success? Well, what we want to remind you is there is no like ceiling on success. You can just keep going,
right,
regardless of what the books tell you and the things that we say, like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that fear is a huge underlying fact for why people use like self-love is just a trending word instead of really understanding that, yes, there is work to be done in order to step fully and wholly into yourself and into self-awareness,
right,
which is all what self-love is. And the question is, are you willing to work through some of that fear? Are you willing to get a little messy
mm-hmm.
to uncover so much clarity?
And some people be like, help.
Absolutely. Absolutely not.
That's a lot of shit. That's
It is
a lot.
a lot.
It's a lot to unpack, and that's where people get scared.
It is. And I think that's what I want when I talk about self-love. What I want people to understand is, yes, it can be you can fall into the self-love trend, but it goes
Mm-hmm.
so much further and so much deeper than the pedicures and the travel
Mm-hmm.
and the makeup and the being able to smile at your face and smile at yourself in a mirror. And I'm huge for mirror exercises, but I'm not asking you to just smile at yourself in the mirror. Right. I'm asking you to look at yourself in your eyes and say words to yourself that you have probably never said to yourself again. And I'm asking you to feel uncomfortable while you do those things. I'm not asking you to look at your face beautifully put together, flawless with all the makeup and all the concealer and be like, oh my God, you look beautiful today. Mm-hmm. I'm asking you to see yourself with your little flaws, looking in your eyes, seeing deep within your soul, because you are the only person that can.
Mm-hmm.
Say, I am willing and showing up. I am willing to show up and love who I am looking at, no matter how they are presenting themselves today.
Right.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of the ways. Mm-hmm. Because that is showing up for yourself wholly and unapologetically. Right.
So my question to you mm-hmm. is, why do you think? Because, you know, you and I, you know, as a therapist, as self-love, we love the mirror exercises, but it's often so hard for people to actually look in the mirror mm-hmm. and say those things back. I don't know how many times I, you know, ask and encourage clients to reframe that and leave the negative part of that out of it, because that's just well, we can't do that, and add this and say it out loud or say it in the mirror. And all of a sudden it's like a shutdown. And it's like the question ends up being, I don't think I believe that.
Yes. Yes.
What do you
Which
do?
is depends on the person. No.
It really does.
All right. So this happened.
Mhm.
It happened at an exercise that I did, I can't force somebody to believe something that they're saying.
Mhm.
So I have done the instance where, let me take your words that you don't believe coming from yourself, and I'll ask, do you trust me enough to hold some space for you, to allow me to take your words, look you in your eyes, and say them to you? Because in a world where we are conditioned to rely on the opinions of others, speaking positivity into our own selves is not something that is easy for many people. Hearing positive things from other people is great, is wonderful. And sometimes you have to meet people where they are. And if that's where they are, then that's what I would recommend.
Mhm.
And in doing that, I also recognize that I can say your words to you 70 times over. I can look you in your eyes. I can mean every single word with every fiber of my being, and you may still not believe it.
Mhm.
So then what I ask and what I challenge is to not give up. Because if you continue to look at yourself in the mirror, look yourself in the eyes, and say words that you came up with, so that makes me believe that either you really want to believe them, or somewhere deep down, you do know that these words are true,
Mhm.
that eventually the discomfort will ease.
Mhm.
But that's that messy, painful, crappy shit that the people don't want to do.
Yeah, it's too much in a society. So a couple things here, and I believe like this just reminded me of our conversation a few months ago when we were on live. But a couple things, right? So number one, a lot of, if we look at historically with women, again, not to leave out the men, but historically with women, we always have to ask permission for something, or we're waiting for validation for
Yes.
something. Or when it comes to caregiving, everybody feeds on us, right? And it's not as reciprocal.
Right.
Laws like aren't even laws, and bras are not even made.
Right.
Right? Like if we don't know what it is that we want and what we need, wants, needs, and desires.
Yes,
Right?
my favorite three.
Yes. And the thing is, when you talked about earlier about even when it came to yourself about I didn't know who I was and what I wanted, because we never stop to ask ourselves that.
Right.
Because a lot of times we don't have time to, because we have lived in a society for so long where we were always on the kind of at the bottom of the barrel, right? Not really thought of in that way of being able to express wants, needs, and desires. And even today in a society where we're expected to multitask, even if you have work or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like you're still expected to show up regardless of how exhausted you are, or what you might have to do, and nobody else cares about that. So it's hard to show up for yourself and think and believe that you can't prioritize yourself.
Absolutely. In a society that like thrives on our insecurities, it is rebellious to love ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're viewed as rebellious. We're viewed as bitches. We're viewed as cocky,
Look at the independent one right there.
Yes.
You don't need nobody.
Right. It's automatically a negative thing. And I challenge you, be that rebel, but reframe what being a rebel means. Being a rebel doesn't have to be negative, you know, but that's also in learning and relearning that stuff ourselves. We also are having to retrain all the people around us.
Right.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. And it's easier to just for some people to just exist.
Absolutely.
But then what you realize is that internally you're not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, and both men and women, but a lot of people then look back at their life and they're just like, I'm not happy. Or you look at even, I guess because I'm a couples therapist, right? Marriage therapist.
Right.
You're 40 years into marriage and you look back and like, we're not happy. We're just not happy. And then they're going off to a divorce. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the beginning, what you did was overcompensate for someone else, and you stopped taking care and loving yourself. You stopped expressing your wants, needs, and desires, and for that person to meet you there as well.
Absolutely.
Instead, it was, let me repress mine or not say, because I want this person to love me so bad. But in them loving you, you stopped loving yourself and knowing what it is that you want. It got lost.
Yes. As someone who just got divorced last Thursday, I can 100%.
I don't know if that's a congratulations. I'm sorry.
It is a congratulations. No, yeah, everything is good. Everything is so good. And I'll tell you, and please know that when I say this does not mean that when you start this self-love journey, if you're not on it, that if you are in a relationship, that all of a sudden you just got to leave all these relationships because you're going to realize all this stuff. That is not the case at all. For me, someone who always knew that I was sort of acting, for someone that always knew that I was not showing up authentically, a lot of the realizations came when I started this work within myself. And I was just blessed to have a husband who is just so phenomenal a human being, that he rode that wave with me, stood by me, and knew, you know, we just happened to be on the same page. I love that man to pieces. I truly do, because he rode a wave with me, rode through this whole journey. I'm sure did his own journey and is probably on his own journey for himself as well. And then we realized that this was an act for both of us. It was just like, we met at a time when, Lord knows, I should not have been entering a relationship. I had a 2-month-old, I was not even recovered from an abusive relationship prior. Like, we knew these things, you know, but you know, you're young and things are good and cultures are a thing, and what people are expected to do when they've been together for a while, and they already have this there's already this kid that wasn't his kid and he was amazing with her, but you know, there were these steps that needed to be taken. And we got along enough to where, okay, cool, we can make these steps, we can do this, you know. And I was blessed in that we had that. I'm blessed in that we got divorced and gave each other a high five in the courtroom and then went out to lunch. Like, I am blessed, you know. And also, he didn't even really know I did not know who I was when we got together. He sure as hell didn't know who I was, you know, but neither one of us knew that we didn't know each other, you know? And I think, so that's why I think it's important. I think that the younger you are when you're on this journey, the better, which is why it being a trend is great, because it's putting that awareness into these teenagers' minds, into these young adults. But it's also scary that it is showing up as just a trend.
Right.
Because there's so much inner work that either you're ready to deal with or you're not, or you don't even realize is truly a part of it. And it's such a touchy subject for people. Loving yourself it's touchy. People, I don't know.
Right. Well, it's true, because that might also means you're bringing up trauma.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to bring that up and heal from that. And
right.
and I have to honestly give props, number one, to our generation, because I believe a lot more of us are showing up. I'm not saying that the older generations aren't. I believe that I have a lot of clients that are older, and they're showing up on my screen every week, right? I think it's again, whether it's part of the trend, now it's therapy, but my goal and mission is is redefining mental health, right?
Yes.
I don't want it to be a stigma anymore. Like, we need to redefine it, because it's not just about chronic mental illness. It's
Right.
about, like, it encompasses self-love, self-respect. It encompasses that healing portion that people are often so afraid of, right?
Right.
Because self-love is also part of identifying some of those things that may have broken down that self-love. And if I have to dig back down deep into that, I may not have time to pull myself together up to go to work, to show up, just be present in the moment of wherever I'm at. But the reality is, if you don't show up now for it, when do you show up? Because life continues going on.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And I think with the whole self-love word or phrase, it makes you feel like you got to do it all alone.
Yeah.
And you don't.
You don't.
You gotta reach out.
Yeah.
You need to lean on people, because when you dig deep down and you're in those trenches and you don't know how to get out, you need those people that can help you.
The right people.
Absolutely.
The right
Absolutely.
people.
I mean, I'm talking like the therapists, the coaches that are aligned with how with what, fit best with you, the friends that, are like, we know who our friends are, yes. And I think that's something that doesn't always happen. You bring that up, that when we start this journey, or we start doing this work and we start to come to these realizations and this awareness, that people do fall off.
Yes, I was going to bring up that next. Self-awareness is such a powerful thing. Not only do you start becoming more aware of yourself internally, your wants, needs, and desires, and things like that, people start falling off because you are, I always talk about energy and aligning yourself. You no longer energetically are going to be connected to people who were so connected to your wounds.
Yes.
So in reality is that when you start healing and you start focusing internally and really gaining that self-respect, that worth, and encompassing that self-love, I acknowledging, the flaws or the parts of us that we're just like, oh, I wish I could do better, whatever it might be, we start to love those parts anyways, and we start moving forward. And when we start moving forward, people naturally will fall off, because those are the people that were attached to things that kind of kept us in this area.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think people are afraid of that too.
Absolutely. Because then you become, because the falling off is not always just you phase out of a friendship or you phase out of a relationship. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's crazy. You become the villain in a lot of people's stories, because it's a lot of, who the hell does she think she is now?
You changed.
Yes. I hear it all the time. I am like the people pleasing, like, poster child. And as I am slowly becoming less of a people pleaser, the people that benefited from my people pleasing are like, damn, who, like, you really have changed. Who do you think you are? You're rude now. You're this. And it's like, no, I'm not rude. I'm just holding myself accountable for stuff. And that is not serving you anymore. So now it's become a problem for you. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a problem. I was only beneficial to you because I was doing for you, or because
I had no boundaries.
Yes. And then I listen, and I was like the no boundary queen. I still have a lot of areas where I need to work on boundaries, but that's where I feel like I lost the most people. And was it painful? Hell yeah. Do I mourn some of those people still? Grieve the fact that some of these people are not around? Absolutely, 100%. Do I think some of them are amazing people? Absolutely. Do I think some of them are asses? Yes, I do. But I think it's a part of the process. And it has increased my self-respect so much to be able to let those people go. and because I'm in a place and because I got to a place where I had that self-respect, I did not need to let people go in a way that was disrespectful. I didn't need to create additional drama in my world for that to happen. Did some people want additional drama? Absolutely. But I was able to show up 100% for me in a way that I was just not going to entertain that.
Right.
And it has been messy, and I expected, there will always be little bits of mess and chaos. But the pros of it all, and the awareness and the acknowledgement and the understanding that I have of who I am and what I desire and what I need and what I want, is so much greater that I can handle those little messes now. They don't feel as big as they would have 3 years ago.
Right.
Because my worth is not reliant on those people anymore.
Right. And which also helps with not engaging in the things that they may not understand because they're not on your journey.
Right.
So it makes you can oftentimes show up more compassionately to them.
Oh, yes.
And still respect your boundaries, because it's like, I hear you. I know I've changed. I'm supposed to change. These are the things that I'm learning about myself. This just isn't working, and you can move forward. And regardless of what chit chatter they may have, because you are your journey and moving forward, you don't engage anymore because energetically you're no longer aligning with that.
Right. I can separate that.
Yeah.
From it's all about those boundaries, being able to separate. And it's not about putting this wall up to keep people out. It's about protecting what's within.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And once protecting what's within has become so much more important to me, then always that's become more important to me than making sure that I'm always understood. Making sure that my story is always the story. Like, I don't feel like everybody always needs to know my side of things anymore, because that's just not what's important to me anymore. Because those are the things that I realized I used to think held more weight in my world, and they do not. Because the love and the awareness I have for me is just greater than that. And those things might still be important to other people, even while they're on their self-love journey. I think what's important to understand is that this journey is so different for each individual person, that it can seem, even when people are in the journey, it can seem very judgmental when people like me are like, this is what you have to do, or this is because you get excited about your stuff. You're so excited about where you've come and how far you've come. You want everybody to do things exactly the way you did them. Right. And I think it's just important to understand that this is a journey, and everyone's journey is different. And the path that people are going to take may not be the same path as yours.
Right.
And that is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So to wrap this up a little bit,
yes.
Where do we go as far as, so once people start on that journey, and they discover, this is something that I truly want to do for myself.
Yes.
A lot of times of what makes people stuck is they know all this. They're, again, like you said, like I know all the things that come to losing weight, but the implementation. So what would be some of your suggestions or recommendations as far as if they're hesitating to implement some of these things?
Reaching out for help. Reaching out to people that they trust, whether that be coaches, therapists, friends, themselves, like in their journal. So I'm, again, a huge journaler. So I'd always recommend a few journal prompts. And I'll just give them quick. There's like 3. One of them I've already done is like, what does unconditional love look like for me? And that's because that's going to show you when you can come up with the definition of unconditional love, what unconditional love looks like for you, then you are already writing yourself the recipe that you need to step fully into unapologetic self-love. Right. And then the other one is, what is keeping you from your dreams? And as you work through that, those answers are going to change, because then what I challenge you to do is, what is keeping you from your dreams? And with each of those answers, you then follow up with a why. Why is that specific thing? Why is that specific thing? And you why yourself
Yes.
to the root of it.
So each statement, I do this as well. So after each statement you have,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to ask yourself why. And
Yeah.
then you're going to, once you answer that why, it'll be another statement. And then you ask yourself why again, until you feel like you've gotten to the bottom root of
Mm-hmm.
your why.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when you get to those bottom roots of your whys, that's where some of that trauma might show up. Some of those things that you've been hiding from or shoving so far deep down, you didn't even realize they existed anymore. And then that's when I think that additional help might sometimes come in. And what that help looks like is different for every single person. So it's really what does that unconditional love look like for you? And as you continuously journal that, and I'm talking journal on this days, like journal on it on a Monday and then come back to it a week from now, your answer is going to be slightly different. And you are slowly putting together that recipe of what it is that you require. That's going to help you determine some of those needs, some of those wants, and some of those desires. Right. And then we ask, what is keeping you from that unconditional love? What is keeping you from those dreams, from those goals, and then those whys after? So that's what I think. And then always just reaching out and being honest with yourself and allowing yourself to feel that shit. Like, it's okay.
And realize you can't run away from yourself.
Right.
You can try.
Yeah, you sure can. I did for years. Yeah. And there was that piece of me that was just like, no, girl, I am here. And I'm going to give you some sort of trouble until you realize. And this trouble was showing up in all the different ways, in all the self-sabotaging ways.
Yep. All the time. And you don't want to wait until it's that moment where it blows up in your face. And then it's like, now it really feels like your whole world is falling apart at that point in time. You want to acknowledge that, become aware of it. And yes, there's going to be a little bit of fear behind that because, again, people like to control their environments and everything steady and going with the flow. And if I do this, or if I take that Jenga piece out, it might fall or it might not fall. But when you have the assistance and help of someone who cares and someone who can be of support and empowerment to you and help guide you through that, you won't fall apart. I mean, we break some things down, right? Yep. I mean, you have to break it down a little bit to start rebuilding it back up the way that you want it to be.
Right.
Your more authentic self. Right. But at the end of the day, you'll have that support and you won't feel completely alone in that process either.
And then it's just like you said, and I think the biggest thing to remember in all of this is just to remember that it is a process. This is not an overnight thing. This is not, there's never really like this end destination. It's a constant evolving process.
Yes.
That crap is always going to come up, even when you're at this showing up unapologetically who you are, fully aware, shit is still going to pop up. And that is okay. You're just going to have more of those tools in your tool belt on how to recover faster from each of those things.
Yeah. You deal with it a lot differently.
Oh, yeah.
It don't seem so agonizing anymore.
Right.
It's just like, oh, okay, I got this. You're looking and viewing life a little bit differently.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I love this. I could talk about this stuff all day.
Me too, but I'm hungry.
I know, girl, me too. So I get it.
But thank you so much, Michelle. It's always a pleasure to have you, sitting here chatting with me. And I think this is so important, so vital in every day. And, with the movement, even with yourself, I'm so glad to be connected to you. To be able to talk about this and put this out there because it's so important. Again, it's not a trend. It's something that everybody should be doing and working on every single day. Prioritize you every day.
Every day. Thank you so much for having me on. I love coming live with you. It's always fun. It's always a good combo.
always. So that is it for today. So everyone who has joined, thank you so much. For those who are replaying it, I hope you guys enjoy. And feel free again to give us some topics for Topic Thursdays, and I will always have a special guest on to talk about whatever we need to, so that way everyone is informed. Again, I'm trying to redefine mental health. This is one of those things that we try to do it because it's just not all encompassing of one thing. It's a lot of things. So thank you again, Michelle, for coming
Thank
on.
you.
And thank you everyone else, and tune in soon. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.